We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 this morning. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. I'm going to read the whole chapter, I guess, is what I'll read this morning. Beginning in verse 1, it says, "Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few. And those that look out of the windows be darkened. And the doors shall be shut in the streets, and the sound of the grinding is low. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. But when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be burdened, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed, and sought out, and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened to the master of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And further by these, my son, be admonished, of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandment. For this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil." You know, this morning as we begin to think about this, I want us to think for just a moment about whether or not we found it. And what I'm asking is, have we found the secret to life? We found the secret to life. You know, here as Solomon is delivering these words to us, he's trying to help us to understand and find the things that are important to us in this world. Trying to help us find a way out of the problems and things that go on as we go through life. So as we think about, have we found the secret to life, you know, there's really no secret. Solomon here, as he begins to tell us there in verse 1, he says, "Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth." So really there's no secret here as he begins to tell us these things. He's telling us that we need to follow God, that we need to find him when we're young, and that we need to follow him in our youth. You know, Solomon understands that there's a need in our lives, and he's wanting us to find a way out from the tragedies and troubles and difficulties and infirmities that come about in the life that we live. He's wanting us to remember our Creator. Remember the one that created us, and remember the one that formed us out of the dust. You know, he's not wanting us just to think upon him. You know, most everybody in this world knows who God is. You know, they know that there's something greater than they are. Even those that I think say there is no God, in some way has recognized that there's a God, or they wouldn't say there wasn't one, right? So in some way they have recognized it. But he wants us to remember our Creator, not just think upon him, but come to know him. Have a relationship with him. Develop a communion with him before it's too late. Before time runs out. Before things happen that we're not able to do those things anymore. And he goes on here and tells us in the next verses why that is important. You know, why it's important that we do those things. He says we need to do it in our youth while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh. Now shall say, I have no pleasure in it. Have no desire. Don't want to do it. Don't want to come to know the Lord. He tells us we need to do it before the evil days come. In verse 2 there, it gives us the reasons why we should go ahead and do this. It says, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. So he tells us here that we need to do it while we still have a good mind. While we still have a mind that's fresh and a mind that understands and knows. You know, when we're young, it seems like life's going to go on forever, right? Seems like things are just going to go on, and we have plenty of time and things of this nature, but as we get a little older, things begin to change. You know, as I read and studied this, there was a commentator in it, and he said there is 3 things that indicate the onset of old age. First one's memory. And then he said, I can't remember the other 2. You know, if I hadn't wrote down memory, I might not have been able to remember the first one. That's one of the first things that goes, isn't it? We get to where we can't remember what we are doing at that moment in time, or what we come in a room for. You know, Kay will come into a room I'm in every now and then. She'll look at me and she'll say, why am I here? And what am I looking for? What am I trying to find? What did I come in here for? We get to where we really don't have those cognitive abilities that we had when we were young, not able to remember, not able to learn, and things of that nature as we are when we're young. He goes on here and he tells us, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble. You know, this is talking about our arms. You know, when we get older, we begin to shake, don't we? We begin to have trembles in our life. The things that used to work perfectly for us now no longer work the way that they once did. There in the rest of that verse it says, and the strong men shall bow themselves. That's talking about our legs, how our legs begin to be bent and the strength begins to go out of them as we grow a little older. And the grinders cease because they are few. This is talking about our teeth, you know, as they begin to fall out and things of that nature. When Solomon was here on this earth, they didn't have all the modern conveniences that we have now. They wasn't able to go right back in and put a tooth in the place of one. So he's telling us here, you know, when those things begin to happen to us, begin to fall out. And those that look out the window be darkened. He's talking about our eyes. You know, as things begin to be cloudy and things begin to dim in our eyes. He goes on and he says, and the door shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low. Again, he's talking about where we have those missing teeth, and when all our teeth are gone, the door of the mouth, the mouth will go shut. The mouth falls in as those things come about. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird. You know, the smallest noise when we get a little older begins to wake us, doesn't it? You know, I know that with children, a lot of times they can sleep through a tornado and it never even rustle them. But as you get a little older, the smallest sound begins to ruffle you, doesn't it? The smallest thing begins to make you wake up and say, what's going on? What's happening here? All the daughters of music shall be brought low. Tells us that we'll begin to lose our hearing. Things will begin to fade. And when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way. You know, when you get a little older, we begin to be afraid of things that are around us, ain't we? Uneven terrain. We don't want to get out to where the terrain is uneven, afraid we'll fall or things of that nature. We begin to be afraid of those things. We begin to stay in more. Don't want to get outside. We don't want to drive at night. We don't want to do the things that come about with age because of some of those fears. Then there it tells us, and the almond tree shall flourish. It's talking about when it blooms, those white blooms, our hair will turn white. begin to show our age a little bit. And the grasshopper shall be a burden. There with the grasshopper, it's talking about how we have those great difficulties and stiffness. And when we get up out of bed of a morning, how everything has to be sort of loosened up again before we can get going and get to doing the things that we normally do. Most of the time, that's what wakes me up of a morning. I get to where I'm hurting and I can't move and I got to get up and do something. We have that great difficulty. Then he tells us, and desire shall fail. Then at some point, we get to where we just don't desire to even go on, do we? We get to the point where we wish things would just hasten to the end. And then he tells us, because man goeth to his lone home, and the mourners go about the streets, then death comes about. And then he gives us some reasons why that death may come about. He says, or ever the silver cord be loosened. He's talking about the spinal cord, as the nervous system and things like that begin to fail. Or the golden bowl be broken. He's talking about our head. If we fall and hit our head or things of that nature. Then he says, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain. He's talking about our heart. We could have a heart attack or things like that. Or the wheel be broken at the cistern. He's talking about our circulatory system. How if we get cut, we could bleed out, or blood clot, or things of this nature. How it causes us to go away into death. So Solomon here is trying to tell us all those reasons that we need to run to God when we're young. As I read over these reasons and I thought about those things cause us a lot of problems. Those things cause us ordeals in our life to where we're not able to function at a level to where we were when we were young, not able to do the things that we were able to do. I know that as we get older, we're able to share God with this world and things like that, share God with the people around us, but maybe not able to go the places we once were able to go. Maybe not able to help the way we once were able to help. Maybe not able to do some of the things that God would have us to do. It's important that we turn our lives and hearts over to God when we're young. That way we're able to accomplish the tasks that God would have us to accomplish. There's another reason there that it tells us, there in the first verse, it says, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. I've noticed that as people get older, they have less of a desire to change. When I first started teaching, I started teaching a group of kids that was from 8 to 12. They were 8 to 12 years old. And they were willing to change. They were willing to do anything you wanted to do. They would change the direction. They would change the program. They would change anything. And you could talk to their parents and tell them, hey, I'm going to change this, or we're going to do this today, or whatever it may be. And the parents would say, hey, that's great. They need some change in their life. They need not to have a regular routine. They need to get ready or be willing to change things up a little bit. And then as I moved up, I found that teenagers were a little less willing to change. They didn't like it quite as much. And then when I started teaching adults, they didn't like change at all. They didn't want change. They didn't want anything different. They wanted their routine. They wanted things to stay as they was. I like it like this. The thing is, we have less and less desire to change as age comes on, doesn't it? I read where a statistic said that 95% of the people that give their heart to God are below the age of 50. 95%. And if you break that on down, I didn't see a statistic, but I would say that probably 75 or 80% of that 95 is probably 20 years old or less. Just guessing. We have less and less desire to change, don't we? It's an importance in our life that we come to know God. At a young age, whatever that age may be, as soon as we have that realization, we need to come to know God. We need to come and understand the need to have God in our life and the need to live for Him. In verse 8 there, it tells us, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. You know, Solomon here is telling us, he says, we can live our whole life. And if we get to the end of our lives without finding the true reason for life, it's all futile. It's all vanity. We find ourselves empty at the end of that life. Verse 13 says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be for good or whether it be for evil. You know, we need to understand that we need to come to know God, that we need to fear God. That's the whole reason for living. God created us for His pleasure. He created us for a life of worship and a life of service to Him. And when we go in a different direction, we never really find that fullness that God wants us to have in this world. And when we get to the end, if we've never found that, then, as I said, Solomon here said, it's vanity. It's empty. As we lose our ability to change, and our motivation and desire goes away, we have less and less desire to come to know Him. So it's important that we come to know Him and we serve Him while we're young, because the older we are, the less likely we are to come and seek God. You know, as I thought about this and I looked at this and studied this, I thought how often these things happen. You have young people that are in your church and they are a vital part of the church and they have a desire to be part of the church, to learn and to grow and things of this nature. And then life expands. You know, in today's culture, you get driver's license. You get to go off to college, you get a job, you know, life expands. And when life expands, what happens? We begin to seek after those things in life instead of following after what Solomon here says is important, the most important thing that we'll ever find in our life. Now, depending on where those things in this world take us, we may or we may not find our way back. May or may not. So it's important that we find it when we're young, right? And we hang on to it as tightly as we possibly can throughout life. So I have to ask you this morning, have you found that secret to life? Have you found that secret? You know, this world that we live in is seeking. It's looking for that one thing that will fulfill them. It's looking for that one thing that will put them over the top. You know, and I think about my own life. I'm the only one that I can really think about, because I'm the only one I know. And I know how I felt as I grew up. I was looking for that one thing. I was looking for that thing that put me across the top. And it didn't matter what I found. It always left me searching for something else. Until I came to know God. Until I knelt by my bed that evening and I asked God into my life. And then when I asked Him into my life and I raised up, I was complete. I'd found what I was looking for. The satisfaction that only He can give. The life that only He can give. You know, I didn't do it when I was that young. I was 30 years old, 31 years old. But I'm thankful that God gave me that opportunity to understand my need for Him. Because if time would have went on, I'd have had less and less desire to know Him. So this morning, have you found it? Have you found what we're seeking for, the secret of life? Because the only place we can find it is in God. And He's offering it to us freely. All we have to do is accept it. Have you accepted that free gift today? If you would, stand with me. Page 340. Turn